I'm very glad now to introduce Dieter Buchhart, an art historian and theorist, highly experienced curator of significant exhibitions of key early 20th century artists in major museums in Europe and the United States. Dieter regularly publishes in magazines and in major catalogues, and is a leading figure in the research of the work of Jean-Michel Basquiat, and is going to be talking about crossing lines, the working relationship between Warhol and Basquiat. Dieter.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. True pleasure being here during this winterly period. So, Basquiat and Warhol, crossing lines. Nick Rhodes argues, he was one band member of Duran Duran, argues, and he was a dear friend of Warhol. So when you pull together these two incredible talents, so Basquiat and Warhol, and minds, and make it work, you get the explosion of color and energy, and what you're never gonna get from either one of them in exactly that way. And so when I first saw the collaborations, I was completely speechless. Let me try that out now. Yes. So what does it show? It shows that there was quite some skepticism, and there still is, against works done by two singular artists, and also very prominent artists, who worked together in a substantial way as Basquiat and Warhol did. On the other hand, you have the argumentation of artists like Virgil Abloh that life is a collaboration. Where I think art can be sort of misguided is that it propagates the idea of itself as a solo love affair, one person, one idea, no one else involved, which then circles back to the romantic idea of what an artist is, which was created in the 19th century and not before at all. So that works. Joint artistic work was common in sub-Saharan, African, Oceanian, and the indigenous art of the Americas, as well as European art until the Baroque period. In Europe, until the modern era, sculpture and painting was not considered art, but crafts, until the romantic concept of the impoverished artist genius. So just showing you two examples of very early collaborations, indigenous from Alabama of the Americas on the right-hand side, and from Nigeria. And now I make a big step forward to the 20th century. And one collaboration of two artists, August Macke and Franz Marc, where Franz Marc was actually claiming that it needs more than one artist to create something great, as already Vincent van Gogh had claimed before when he created the Yellow House, where he invited Paul Gauguin to come, which in the end didn't really work out, but the idea was there. So as musicians, as Richard Wagner have as well seen as the future of art, collaboration. On the other hand, never forget that in music, collaboration is not just intended, it's needed to actually create something great. Why it's not very misleading that, of course, Nick Rhodes would see the greatest coming out of a collaboration of at least two artists working together. That was a mural done by the two artists and then forgotten and rediscovered 1980 in the studio of August Macke. One of the inspirations in the 20th century of collaborative works are the cadavres exquis, so meaning that several artists work unknowingly about what the other one has been doing, and they used the human body so that they could kind of continue their lines and have one theme they would be aware of. There is a big difference. There is, which I call modification and collaboration. So Julian Schnabel, as one of the lead figures of the 80s in New York downtown scene, he traded with David Salle, and one of the works they traded, Julian had the feeling this is not finished, so he would add this counterfei to finish the painting of David Salle, but David was not involved, so meaning it's of course no collaboration in the sense of two artists working together, but a modification in the sense of there is something existing and I keep on working on it. That's important thinking of the works of Basquiat and Warhol, because in 1983, let's go a little bit back. So Basquiat started his career like in 1979 as Samo copyright, with his friend Al Diaz, so he was collaborating from the very beginning. Of course, Basquiat is known as this great solo artist who created works that changed art history in our understanding today. What happened here was that in 1982 in November, Bruno Bischofberger formally, so he was the dealer of Basquiat and Warhol, formally introduced Basquiat to Andy Warhol. They had met before, so Glenn O'Brien, one of the central theme persons of the downtown scene, had come with Basquiat to the factory before. Basquiat had sold 2 of his postcards to Warhol in 1979, but the first formal meeting and also Polaroid session, so meaning portrait session, was in 1982. From then on, slowly they developed a friendship between the two of them, very slowly. In 1983, they were already working out together in the studio of Warhol. He was hanging around in the factory a lot, Basquiat. And one day, while they were working out, Jay Shriver, the studio assistant at that time, kind of preparing the canvases for Warhol, etc., he was eyewitnessing as Warhol said to Basquiat, you know, there is this small silk screen standing around there. Why are you not going to do something with them? So what happened, and you see the result here, it was dollar signs, it was lobsters, crabs, and eggs. And they're all small format, but what happened, it was a finished silkscreen of Warhol. And Basquiat did a modification of it, as you see here. So in typical Basquiat style, but what results is, of course, an artwork by Warhol and Basquiat, even though it's not a collaboration. And so the show at Fondation Louis Vuitton and also at the, no, not at the Brand Foundation, but at Louis Vuitton starts with these works because that was the start. Parallel to that, Bruno Bischofberger, as the dealer of Clemente, Warhol, Basquiat, and some other crucial artists of that time, had an idea. Loving the surrealists and the cadaver exquis, he had the idea, why not ask 3 of my artists to collaborate? That's what he did. He asked Warhol if he would be open to it. Warhol said, sure, sure. I mean, he was always very open to the plans of Bruno. And then they were figuring out who it could be. So it then, in the end, they ended up with Basquiat and Francesco Clemente. The idea behind was 5 canvases shipped from one studio to the next. So actually, if you look at it, it's not a collaboration again, it's a modification. But they wouldn't be artists if they wouldn't have also like stepped over the rules set by the dealer. And of course, they also collaborated in the factory a little bit on it, which is documented in the journals of Warhol. Even though we know that you have to read the journals of Warhol with a slight skepticism, as it's not really a journal as you would understand. A fascinating work, which I always liked especially, is Don't Tread on Me. It's It's a small canvas, it's a dollar sign, and it shows what's happening in these then following collaborations, still a modification, but it's a dialogue in contradictions, because Warhol, as an artist seen unclearly between, or in the blurriness of economy and art, and is he now reflecting about what economy means? Is he criticizing it or not? Which would be like different viewpoints changing over the course of years. But with Basquiat, it was crystal clear. It was a criticism of capitalism from the very start. So the signs of Brooklyn shops he took, the pesoneto from the market, whatever he took, the words he took was just what you would find on the streets, what you would find in your immediate just surroundings. So it was the opposite of the icons of produced by Andy Warhol or being significant for Andy Warhol. What happened here is it says it all. So Basquiat used the Getzen flag, called after the General Getzen, who created that flag, "Don't tread on me," what at that time was kind of a symbol of going against a system in a certain way. Later it became a flag of the anarchists and also now the right-wing movement, but in the 80s it was different. So Basquiat picked it as in the sense of opposing racism, opposing capitalism, opposing imperialism, slavery, everything where our Western wealth is built on. So he took this rattlesnake that kind of is ready to attack and defend as a symbol, which he painted over the dollar sign, but has the form. So it's a form concurrence that he creates here in this case. Just a little excursus. Where does it all come from that in the 80s it was so normal to collaborate? It goes back to the Surrealists, it goes back also to the workshops, of course, from Middle Age on and all that. But of course there was already in the 60s the movement of like the Cobra or other movements that were collaborating. Frank Bowling was collaborating with his wife, and others were collaborating, Sam Gilliam with his printer. And so it was a practice that was there from the at least 60s, a normal practice, becoming more and more normal. And Warhol in the New York art scene was, of course, a driving force of that, with all the medias he used, the interview magazine he published. That was all just collaborative in that sense. And then in the 80s, it was also in the German Neue Wilde and all these movements around the globe. There were a lot of musicians also practicing painting, drawing. So it was a very normal way of practice. And also in the philosophical part of it was Guattari and Deleuze, it was just this group fantasy idea had manifested since the 60s, and in the 80s it was just part of the normal discourse of the time. So in the 80s, everyone would collaborate with everybody. When Keith Haring met Basquiat, they would create a couple of beautiful drawings, which normally people don't know about, but which exist. Now I can use this laser pointer, so you see Basquiat here, you see Haring here, Basquiat, Haring, and so on. Then Basquiat went out, he met A1, Aka King, Anthony Clark in his civil name, who died in the meanwhile. But so when they met in 1982, and Basquiat wrote it on the back, September 1982, his meeting with A1. And they immediately went to the studio and immediately collaborated on this painting. Oh, that was too fast. You see a typical figure of Basquiat, sign of Basquiat, but that's all A1 here, who graffitied actually, like on a wall, the work of Basquiat, and he accepted it. Like tags by what you can see here, Freddy, also one of the kind of founders of MTV and hip hop, Aero, Keith Haring, LA2, Haring, Origin of Cotton, The Crown, copyright by Basquiat, which then what Alice said about the branding. So the 80s is a lot about the artist is a brand, him or herself, and brands her or himself, what Basquiat did from the very beginning on. Then for the wedding of Madonna and Chopin, a collaboration between Andy Warhol and Keith Haring. I'm not ashamed. I mean, you see Haring here. Headline paintings by Andy Warhol. This is a funny thing. That's actually a cadaver exquis by Warhol and Nick Rhodes. So there Warhol collaborated with a musician. Here, of course, Jenny Holzer collaborated with Lady Pink, but Jenny Holzer also in a big project in Vienna in 1986 did a huge collaboration with Keith Haring as well, what nobody would think of today. Or when Jenny was running around in New York early on, 79, 80, and have her truism affiched in the public space, she would just stumble over Keith Haring, fishing his actually headline works and seeing Basquiat and kind of making his tags. So all this connected at that time beautifully. Kenny Scharf, LA2. LA2 is known, Little Angel 2 is known as a collaborator of Keith Haring, but in this case, he collaborated with Kenny as well. Of course, the classical graffiti artists, I call it now classic mode, to make a division between, but you can already tell everything's fluid. So you see A1, whom you met before, Crash and Days, collaborating on this huge painting here, and again the wrong button, which, 8 meters long. But it was just all happening at the same time. Fun Gallery, for example, there was this fridge and Patty Esther, she let the artist just graffiti it. You'll find Kenny, you'll find a lot of Kenny, but you'll also find LA2, Haring, Basquiat, everyone on. And then, for example, Keith Haring was always up to speed, and so what he did is he put this blue vase in his studio. He just put it up, and the artists coming by, like Basquiat you can see here, but then there is Kenny Scharf again, there was Futura 2000, and they were working on this vase. So that was the time. These are two works just done by Basquiat Clemente, so that's what I meant. It was not, even if Bruno would give this idea of these 15 works, it was, they would do what they would like to do, of course, and so they tried out the collaboration between the two of them, which did not continue. Here is a beautiful collaboration of the three of them called In Bianco. What's very interesting is, so just to give a very quick intro here, Warhol started with the silk screen, and then Basquiat reworked it, and Clemente worked on top of it. Interestingly, Basquiat reworked and Clemente again, so it's the opposite. First Warhol, Clemente, then Basquiat in this case. Here you see silk screen done by Basquiat. So even the techniques are shifting. Again, painting on the left by Clemente, a drawing by Basquiat, and a silk screen by Warhol. What's fascinating with these 15 works, they are so different. This is that's a pretty genius one. So Basquiat started with a collage of drawings, Xerox, and Clemente would paint heavily over. And then Warhol didn't know what he could do there, but then he just kind of silk screened it a couple of times. And that's his collaboration in that case. Showing this because it was the first time in this collaboration of the three of them that Warhol started hand painting officially again, which is not really true because he would also prepare some of the grounds, and you see it in the video there. I mean, he was painting, but not in the sense of going back to 62 and 61 and kind of projecting an ad and then kind of hand paint. That's what he did in these collaborations again. So that's once again. And here you see the first time he hand painted the GE, General Electric sign and application. Here he made a drawing, and you see Basquiat. You see the kids' paintings by Warhol, the General Electric sign. You see a beautiful drawing actually by Clemente, and then a little bit of Basquiat. Now we are heading to the collaborations by Basquiat, Warhol. So after these first modifications, and then he did on the small silk screens by Warhol, and this project planned by Bruno Bischofberger, they just kept on working. And I assume, or what I found out kind of through to eyewitnesses, it seems like that was parallel to Bruno's project. And that went on until at least end of 1985, certainly until 1986 with the punching bags, which is against what have been told before, because the story was always they would end with the presentation at Tonische Frasi in the fall of 1985, but that seems to be untrue. So here Warhol presented something that kind of visualizes his ideas of the icon and the repetition. And what you see here, Basquiat respectfully just took the left-hand side and inserted Charlie Parker as his great idol, like on a coin. Impossible to think that an African-American jazz player would be on the official coin. So let's keep on. Another collaboration where all this is hand-painted by Warhol and then kind of erased by Basquiat. And Basquiat said he would start most of the paintings. He would put some very concrete or recognizable, like a newspaper headline or a product logo, and then would sort of deface it. I would sort of deface it, he said. And then I would try to get him to work some more on it, and then I would work more on it. I would try to get him to do at least two things, you know. He was laughing. He likes to do just one hit and then have me do all of the work after that. So that was Basquiat. So they had a very good friendship, great humor. There was a play, by the way, on Broadway in New York about the collaboration, which was very misleading. It was a very nice play, but just misleading about the relation of the two of them. So one very important subject of the two of them is the headline paintings, and I see my time is ending, but I'm just Warhol came back to the headline paintings around 1980, beginning of the 80s. That was also, especially when Michael Stewart was killed by police officers in the subway in 1983 in September, he intensified his work with the headlines again. And that was then the perfect timing for the headline paintings together with Basquiat. This top cop admits hanky-panky, top cop admits hanky-panky is written here. The interesting thing is this top cop was the first African-American commissioner of the city of New York. What Basquiat was so appalled by, of course, this use of who had a hanky-panky with Techtelmechtel, with someone, but that this first representative of the African-American community as the head of the police in New York, that he kind of overpainted it, and what he did was he created this like op-op, making not really sense. It's more like a sound poem what he created. So there was a real dialogue about it. And as just showing you a few logos here, and I will skip a little bit of those just to let you know, as I'm in the minus already, minus 39. So what's very interesting here, the subway fire, Basquiat would react with that, with bodies of dead people. So he would actually interact with the idea Warhol offered. And that, I feel, is very important. So we, you see now a couple, the ones who haven't seen the big collaboration shows, see now a couple of collaborative works. And partially extremely large scale, very impressive. This is one of the last collaborations, certainly finished a little bit later than the Tony Schiafrasi show. You see the favorite two collaborations of Warhol and the Tony Schiafrasi show, where they then slowly ended their collaboration. But as said, Basquiat would still come to the studio after that and finish up a few of the collaborations. They might have done the punching bags in '86 when the trial, when Michael Stewart officers got on trial. Warhol died in 1987, and Basquiat was devastated and created this gravestone. So, referencing the cross done in 1981, two of Andy Warhol. Thank you so much.